guys, Matt from Rec Brewery. Happy Homebrew Wednesday to you. That be the red Pilsner. So it's as ready as it could be for the moment. It is still sort of, lagering. It's been in the keg for, I don't know, a week and a half probably. And yeah, it's been in there long enough for me to try it out. I'm actually trying to get this video put together quickly. It's Wednesday afternoon before I start work, so I wanted to get this going. It's afternoon now, so yeah, it's good enough time for a beer. It's got a nice, pleasant sort of floral aroma to it. Nothing real, too powerful. Just a real clean aroma on that. Cheers. Oh, that is delicious. I was going for a red in color. It's not really red. It's more copper, I guess. I was just trying to be different. It's a fairly basic Pilsner recipe. I did screw up a little bit on the hop schedule, but it actually turned out in my favor. This is really nice. And I thought with having mostly red eggs in there, it would become red. But yeah, not really. That's okay. It's still really good. It's really really crisp, real smooth. It's not bitter at all, and the hops are kind of like just kind of there coated over top, so they're not taken away from anything else in this beer. That's really nice. So I have some brew day footage for you guys to check out, so I'm going to plow through some other things here quickly. First, about the brew day, it was the Oktoberfest, or the Marzen. I got to figure out with my system. I've been, this is now the third brew on here. My gravity was good, crush was good on that, but my volumes were still off, and I think I probably just need to sparge with more than Beersmith is saying. I couldn't figure out where in Beersmith to make those modifications. I mean, I guess I could just tell it that I have an extra gallon, or even less than I get. 3/4 of a gallon, I think, is what I was short, or half, somewhere in there. You'll see in the brew day. I guess I could, if I really wanted to care about it, I could go into Beersmith and tell it that I have an extra half a gallon of loss in the mash tun, because it seems to be that my volume gets screwed up when I'm going into the boil kettle during the sparge. So I think that somewhere in that process I'm losing, or I'm not putting in enough water. So, but that's a minor thing. Everything else turned out great. The efficiency was right where I wanted it to be. I was aiming for like a 1061, and I ended up with 1065, I believe. The other thing that I noticed, and I think I talked about it a little bit in the brew day video, brewing water. Let me get this closer to the screen here. So brewing water was projecting a 5.4 mash, and I got 5.2. Now, if nothing else, it's very consistent, but it is a bit frustrating to know that it's nowhere near what this is projecting. I don't mind a couple points off, but 0.20 off is a lot, but at least I can plan for it. I know that it's always going to be 0.2 off. I originally thought maybe it was because of the acidulated malt. Maybe it was more acidic than I was putting into the program, because the program lets you put in like a 1% strength, 2% strength. But this beer didn't need any, so that wasn't the reason. I can definitely discount that from the reason. So I think it's just going to be one of those things where I'm just going to have to adjust it. If I want to get a 5.2 mash pH, then I need to just tell brewing water, get it to where it's going to end up to be about 5.4, and it should come out to close to what I'm looking for, or if not spot on. The only downside of that, of course, is when I'm brewing a stout and want like a 5.4 or 5.5 pH, I have to tell brewing water 5.6, 5.7, and of course when you do that, it gets all up in arms, like, whoa, that's out of range. So, but anyway. The only other thing I want to talk about too for you guys here quickly is yesterday I went to the Homebrew Club. They did their fantasy draft. I think I may have mentioned this before in a previous video. It was a lot of fun. It's sort of like fantasy football style, beer edition. So you just sort of like raise your hand, call out the ingredient when it's your turn to do your draft. So I tried to go through a bit of a strategy, grabbing my base malt first, grabbing one of my hops first, things I think might have been taken quickly. I went in with a couple of recipes in mind. I was either going to do like a Munich Dunkel or like a Doppelbock or something along those lines. I had a couple ideas as a backup, so if I was starting to go down a path, I didn't want to get pigeonholed into brewing a recipe and then get screwed over by an ingredient later on. So if anybody's interested, I can list out the all the ingredients that I got. But what's nice is at the end they do a yeast draw. So after you've gone through the 8 rounds of picking all the ingredients, because you have to pick 1 base malt, 1 specialty malt, 2 hops, 1 adjunct, and then 3 brewer's choice items, which could be any of the above. And then of course once an ingredient gets taken, nobody else can take it. So it was a lot of fun to go through that list. When it got down to the end, it started getting weird. People were picking marshmallows and M&Ms and all kinds of stuff to add to their beer. So at the end, they put a hat together of 12 different yeasts, and everybody in turn, I was the 5th pick, had to pick out their yeast, and whatever you get is what you have to deal with. So I got lucky that all the ingredients that I put together here should make a decent Munich Dunkel, which is what I'm going to try to do. And the yeast I ended up getting for that was WLP300, which is a heavy yeast, which should work really well with that style of beer. So I got lucky. The beer has to be done by November 16th. That's when the judging is happening. They're going to do tournament style, similar to like fantasy football, where you have the brackets. You go head to head with a beer, and then you move on to the next round, go head to head with another beer, and so on. So it should be a lot of fun. But that's it. That's all that's going on in the brewing world here for me this week. SJ4 Challenge beers are reviewed, scored, sent in last night, so I'm waiting to see how that goes, and hopefully myself and some of you guys move on to the next round and we get to taste some more awesome beers out there in the brewing community. So enjoy the brew day footage, guys. I'll talk to you next week. Have a happy Homebrew Wednesday, and cheers. Just readjusted the mill. It's been a while since I've done that, so got a good crush there. Alright, just got some of the hoses set up here. And I kind of like doing this last time, so I'm going to do it this time again, where I put all the grains in the mash tun and the brewing salts up front, and we're just waiting for this hot liquor tank to come up to temp. So we got the potassium metabosulfate in there, aka Camblin tablets, to treat the chlorine and chloramines. Filtered water came through the new, actually I have the new fitting on there if you can see it. There you go, quick release. So I went right out of there straight into the bottom of the kettle. That worked out alright. So now we're just waiting for this to come up to temp. Got it set to 155. So once we get up to 155, we'll go ahead and underlet in the mesh. Alright, we are now underletting. You can see the water coming up there around the grains. Just want to come up to that clip there, which rum's there. I'll go ahead and shut that off. Alright, so we are currently at the point of we've already mixed up the mash. We've got the recirculating going now. Just turn that on. We got the valves at maybe halfway or so. We had to top up the hot liquor tank again just so it was over the herms. And everything's balancing out. So I think we'll go ahead and call this 60-minute mash right now. We're at a good starting point. And we'll let this recirculate for probably a good 5 minutes. And I'll go ahead and check the pH. Yeah, so that would normally be good, right on the money. That's the initial mash pH. And I thought at first it was because of the acidulated malt and why my brewing water is off, but there's no acidulated malt in this, thankfully. Because as you can see, this was supposed to be 5.4. So at least I've ruled out the possibility of it being the acidulated malt strength that's screwing me up here. But for whatever reason, my brewing water is always 0.20 off of what it should be, and I'm not sure why that is. So I guess if I was, I'm just going to have to keep bumping this up to 0.2 higher than what I want it to be. I don't know if any of you guys know why that is. I'm not sure why it's so far off, but it is. So I just went ahead and threw a little pickling lime in there to fix the closer to the 5.4 like I want for this beer. That's better. I think we're just going to roll with that. And that's after adding a half teaspoon of pickling lime. So a little bit more calcium into the beer. Okay, so unlike last time, I'm going to remember to do the mash out. So we're at 15 minutes left in the mash. So now I'm going to start ramping this up to 168 for mash out. And hopefully by the time the mash is over, that will be close at least to that temperature. Alright, we're there, end of the mash, and we came really close. Set it to 168 and we ended up at 166, 167. So we'll go ahead and start setting up ready for sparging. Okay, and now we are sparging. But we got that flow rate the way we want it there. We got this one, just keeping an eye on it. It's still settling out, we'll see. It looks like it's probably about right, about an inch over the grain bed or so. So I got my clip set to that level. Now we got our clip here set, so we know how far we need to come down. Hopefully you can see that with the glare of the sun. Well, we're sparging with about 5 gallons of water. Alright, so we are over the element. And we're just touching the thermoprobe now. So it's pretty good to go ahead and start that up. I got it set to 200, so we're going to get it to 200 and hold it there until we're ready to actually start boiling. I also have, just double check this. Oops. Yeah, I also do have the alarm set as well. Let's take a look here. Yeah, it's set to 200. So this way we'll know when it hits that. Alright, turn the alarm on, that way we know when it hits 200. We'll go ahead and start warming this guy up and getting it close to boil. We'll get up to 200. So when we're at the volume we need to be, which I believe is supposed to be 8.25 gallons. Yeah, so once we get there, then we'll go ahead and start, setting this up to 100% and boiling. Alright, we got ourselves a good rolling boil now. I didn't put up the update, but I already started the timer. Got it at 50%. Alright, 15 minutes left in the boil. This is the only hop addition. I didn't do any bittering with this one. What's interesting, I just noticed here, is like this, I was a little bit low on my pre-boiled amount. I was about a half gallon short. So this hop spider just barely fits in there. So I might actually lower this to the bottom of the kettle. We'll see. Let's go ahead and add this in. We've got an ounce of Ella and Hella Melon. A new hop I'm trying, the Hella Melon. Well, with this being a Marzen, I wanted it to be very malt forward, so there's no bittering. Just gonna give that a try. So with the Wolf Rock tablet straight in there. And we got the hops and the yeast nutrient. It's gonna go in here. And you can't see that. Well, let's just make sure that that gets in there good, and if it doesn't, I'm just going to lower it. So yeah, I had to lower it because the hops were just sort of clumping up in there. They weren't doing anything as far as getting integrated into the wort. So I put it in there. It is all sitting at the bottom of the kettle. It doesn't feel like it's touching the element, so hopefully that's alright. But I pretty much have it in the position I would have before I start whirlpooling, so it'll catch anything coming around before it hits the drain. Alright, that's flame out. And I got all the hoses hooked up for the chiller. Obviously the hose water is not on yet, but we got everything hooked up, so we'll go ahead and start sanitizing the chiller and start whirlpooling. Alright, we are now whirlpooling. Still at 200 degrees. Same down here, just about 200 degrees. So we'll run this probably 15 minutes. Let everything get all nice and sanitary through the chiller. So we were aiming for 1061. We got 1065, but I think that's probably because I was a little bit short. So instead of post boil of 8 1/4, I was like a little over 7.5 gallons. And so now we're going into the fermenter, and those a little bit of hops come through there, not much. It's okay. I pretty much do what I always do, and I just stick the hop spider there right at the end, right behind the ports, as you can see. And we're just washing out the kettles. This is the mash tun getting a alkaline brew wash. Do the same thing with the brew kettle. Just rinsed it out, but I'll run that through this as well. And there she is, all parked away. I didn't pitch the yeast yet because the groundwater here is pretty warm. It's still in the 90s today, 95 degrees here. So I'm going to bring this down to close to the range that it's supposed to be for this type of yeast. And then we'll go ahead and pitch it. And there she is, all parked away with the blow-off tube on it. I'm set to 53. So, yep. Now we wait.